Yes, I have been gone for quite some time. I took a break, I moved houses, had internet problems, have microphone problems. You don't want to hear about it. I have returned though. Thank you for your patience. Unfortunately, I don't bring the positive of videos. I want to start with something negative. Something that's been eating away at me for quite some time, and only as of recently has it really hit a point of being critical. I was 25 odd chapters behind on Jujutsu Kaisen. There's no real reason for that. I read a lot of stories, and some stories that I'm not talking about get put on the back burner. That makes sense, right? Kaisen was one of them, and I was happy to put it there. It's also a really fun story to binge read in total, and I highly recommend that even if you're reading it weekly, you go back and read all of this arc in one sitting, if possible. It is a much clearer story being told. You can see the transitions and shifts between each fight thematically and emotionally, contextually, whatever other word you want to add on top of it. It's fun, and that seamless transition is really engaging. I was 20 odd chapters behind and I caught up, but it was not by my own choice. You see, the leaking part of Jujutsu Kaisen I do not like, and I want to be brutally honest, but I also want to give a disclaimer. I'm not going to sit here and morally, ethically get you to do something that you don't care about. If you want to read the leaks, that's entirely up to you. All I recommend is go read it officially, and if you don't like the translation, which is the most common reasoning or complaint, which I don't believe, just click on it and scroll through it. You don't have to read it. As long as you give it that support, you're still contributing to the community. You do what you want to do. I despise these leaks. I have been in this community for a long time, and I think, hands down, Jujutsu Kaisen has the worst leak culture, leaking community, leaking perspective for a story that I have ever seen. It is tremendously bad, and I don't even mean the amount of days it is prior to the official release, because a majority of the time it is 4 to 5 days. I cannot go on Twitter, and now I cannot go on TikTok, and this has always been problematic for years upon years, but for Kaisen, it is spiraling out of control, and nothing is probably going to be done about it. It's annoying, it's disappointing, it's silly to see. Firstly, it was just leaks. It was just the chapter or bits and pieces of the chapter coming out a couple of days before the official release, and that has been kind of the norm or the standard for like 10, 15 plus years, and it's becoming more and more of a thing with other stories, but I don't want to say that it started with Kaisen, but it's definitely been popularized from it. There is so many people trying to gain something from leaking. It has become a competition. It has become a sport. It has become a popularity contest. There are so many people on Twitter, on TikTok, trying to gain a following, trying to compete with other leakers, trying to translate better, trying to release earlier, trying to make more money by doing this. They do not care about you. Funny enough, I would feel more comfortable believing that long-time leakers, that you could argue is a detriment to the community, have never, not once, tried to garner fame from it, not tried to build a community, has not tried to at least publicly compete with other leaking websites. They just translate it as best as they can and they release it when they can. Nowadays, there's like 5 different people on Twitter, specifically for Kaisen, all just trying to get as much possible, all getting the greedy, grabby little hands into everything they can. It truly ruins the experience, I think. It is a detriment to your reading experience, to the Kaisen community, and honestly to the manga industry as a whole. But again, I'm not trying to moral high stand you. I just think it's silly. And it has directly kind of influenced my experience, which is weird because I'm so directly surrounded by manga. I make videos talking about it. It is my job. You would think I would kind of be okay with it, that I would jump on board, or that I too would start talking about leaks or do this or do that. But if anything, it's pushed me so far away from Kaisen and isolated me entirely from it. And I assume a lot of people as well. So many people have been spoiled. I've been spoiled. Not for small things either. Oh, just block that person and 4 other people pop up. Oh, just block all of them and all these new words start popping up. Oh, block all those words and now everything's trending on Twitter. The thing is, even if I delete Twitter, I now have to compete with something like TikTok, and I don't get the chance to just scroll on past it. That is the difference between the community of leaking nowadays. TikTok wasn't around 10 plus years ago. You didn't have to expect it there. Oh, I just delete TikTok and now I have to expect it on YouTube Shorts. potentially even YouTube videos themselves. Facebook, people still use that. Do you see the issue? I may as well just chuck my whole phone out if I don't want to get leaked 4 days before the chapter releases. But I think the saddest thing overall, there's so much excitement for these chapters, so much excitement to talk about these things, and I see so many passionate people breaking things down and explaining things and making videos, and I know that they're all passionate people. I know that they all care about these characters and these worlds and Akutami as an author, and yet when the official release does drop, dead silence. 4 days prior, it is a party. Everyone's theory craft and everyone's going crazy on Twitter and TikTok and every social media app for like 2 whole days straight, but as soon as the official chapter drops, not a single word. We're done. You can't hype up something for 4 days. Not to be dramatic, but I find that to be tragic. And the worst part of it is that it will just continue. But this video is not going to do anything. It doesn't mean anything. It's just expressing how I feel about it and how I felt for a while, and only really come to terms with it fully because I went back to reread a lot of things and to catch up on the story myself. Enough of the ramble. I caught up to Kaisen, and what I read, very enjoyable. What I said before about binge reading in bulk, I actually mean it. I think it is a much better experience, and don't get me wrong, weekly reading can be fun for certain stories. It can be fun for Kaisen, but something about the Sukuna fight and the different phases, transitions, and just the amount of people that have come in and out of the fight, I think is reflected a lot better within a binge read. Going back and reading 20 odd chapters, pretty much since the start of the Kashimo stuff, was really entertaining and kind of eye-opening to the amount of transitions that actually take place, especially thematically. Because these transitions are kind of rapid, there's not a whole lot of chapters between them. When you're reading it in succession, it feels a lot more natural. It feels less jarring, and that is to be expected. You're not waiting 7 days. So that binge reading experience is kind of carefully optimized, almost like a volume reading. Some people enjoy that a lot more than binge reading. You get about 10 to 14 chapters sometimes per volume for weekly stories. So it makes sense that it's curated in a way where you're kind of following a certain pattern and trying to hit as many notes as possible before that volume has come to a close. There's certain things that I didn't really like, and it's nitpicky. Some moments felt monotonous, very repetitive, very by the numbers or by the books, and I say that respectfully just because it is a lot of action, it is a lot to draw, it's entertaining but kind of turn your brain off entertaining. Not for all of it, just certain moments, and I can't necessarily point them out, so there's not really a fault, but when reading it, I think you can feel it. Like, oh, this is dragging on for a little bit too long, or this interaction is oddly winded and past its welcome. Just certain things feeling out of place, out of order, and not fitting in as easily or effortlessly or naturally as the structure of the story being told. Now, I wasn't entirely sure if I would enjoy the rotation of characters. I like powerful villains. I like Sukuna. What I don't normally like for stories is the repetition of rotation. Basically, if your strongest character is out of the story, the one that everyone kind of relies on, in this case it would be Gojo, you have to naturally put in every other character. Normally, you'd go from strongest to weakest. In rare cases, you would do weakest to strongest, but it's kind of like cannon fire fodder. You're sending them to the slaughter, there's no real point. So you put your strongest in first. And if your strongest start to lose, then you get a little bit desperate and you start sending in everyone. And at this point, it turns into a trying to overwhelm the enemy by sheer amount of numbers. Not curated power, not specifics, just a sheer amount of numbers. Naturally, this doesn't really work, and then you'd kind of rotate back into another character coming back and hopefully bringing this curated fight to a close in some way. Pretty standard. Kaisen kind of does this, but it tries to curate everyone. It tries to give everyone a reasoning or a purpose on why they should be here, and I think that's cool. It can just be a lot. And because you have so many people and giving them so many reasonings, naturally, some people are going to be less effective than others. So it halfly depends on your personal favorite character and where they are, and then the other half is how influential or important are they to this fight? Do they add a lot, or are they just here to fill out space? Do I need to care about them, or can I put them onto the side and care more about this other character that I've already seen be a lot more influential? Does that make sense? In that case, I was worried, and it did get a little bit stale, a little bit weird with just the sheer amount of different characters coming in. But I think because we go through them so quickly, and a lot of them aren't just getting killed off instantly, like they have reasoning, they have purpose, they might back out, they might be serving a different meaning, they might just be here to help and then leave as much as they can. Who knows? But everyone has their own kind of perspective on this situation, and I think it's funneled nicely back into Sukuna. But what helps aid all of this that no one has really probably talked about is that there is one consistent. It's Yuji. Yuji is the one consistency throughout this whole fight. So even if, and I say that very openly because it doesn't have to be Yuji, it could have been Yuta, it could have been Maki, it could have been Gojo, for example, right? But having one consistent point that you can always jump back to does so much more than you would actually think. For example, just take Yuji out of the occasion. Let's make him not consistent. And now you are flipping, free-falling through every single character in this roster. Miwa shows up, Miwa's gone. Maki shows up, Maki's gone. Yuta shows up, Yuta's gone. And you just keep doing it until you find someone that actually can stay just for a little bit and they become the consistent point. Yuji is a perfect thing for that because you get a reveal for that. You get information about him, his relationship towards Sukuna, what he actually is. And that explanation is kind of just thrown out there as like a weird, oh, here you go. It works really well, funny enough. Like you think about it for a moment, like, oh wait, hold on, we're back into the fight. This is really serious. And it's always been serious. That's the thing. Because so many people are flipping out of the story, half of them die, half of them are severely injured. You're rarely just leaving because you can. Sukuna is a force to be reckoned with, and these are difficult characters to write. It's not easy. Showcasing it in a way that is believable after you've killed off the most powerful character that was opposing them, being Gojo, you have to make it believable that the other characters can somewhat meet Gojo's quality. In my opinion, Akutami has done a great job with that, but it is not over. We still have a bit to go, and there's only so much that you can actually flip through those characters and so much that you can draw out this fight. And just from what I've seen, it feels like it's reaching a conclusion. It feels like we're in that final stretch for this fight. People are exhausting their abilities, people are growing and evolving and awakening. There's things happening that feel final. Now, not the finale of the story, but just for this fight. If you've read the most recent chapter, which for me came out today, there is an ending talking about a ghostly apparition and the power of that ghost. Now, a lot of people think that this is a return of a specific character. I very much hope that that isn't the case, because that is not the person we need. If anything, this person could be anyone that is either directly influenced, has the ability, has the prowess of that ghostly character. Bringing them back does nothing to this story. If anything, it completely trivializes what all of these characters have just gone through. It makes it feel like that they were buying time for him to return. We don't want to do that. With them gone, the unpredictable nature of this fight with Sukuna, with Yuji, with this development, with all of these characters feels so much more believable. I don't think this is that character returning. I think this is something of equivalence to that character returning. That power, that aura, that monstrosity. I would say that there is 3 characters that could embody or invoke that same emotion and response. Maki, Hikari, and Yuta. All 3 of these people have that in common, and they could represent that, they could reinforce it, they could channel it, and really become thematically equal to that ghostly apparition and presence. Enough to scare Sukuna, enough to divert his attention. We've seen it before. Right now, however, it's more drastic. because we are reaching that final stretch of the fight. I was impressed. I had fun. I really love Maki. I really, really love Yuji. I love his development. I love what he's going through. I think it's great for him. However, I wish I could talk and indulge and just enjoy with the community at the same time every single week, the same way the Chainsaw Man community does it. We all talk about the chapter at the exact same time, over the exact same period of hours or days. Same with Danadan. Same with all of the digitally released manga. There's no reason that Kaisen can't be that. It's just the leaking community has gotten out of control. Will anything change? Probably not. But I guess we can all do our own part to support the community, right?